And hello again. If you have already watched the previous video, then you know that in this video we will talk, or I will talk to you about this book. I will leave it here for a while for you to be able to read the title and the credentials. If you need, stop the video to take the picture. I will put the picture as the cover of the video. Of course, my cat is still behind me. As you can see, she's not bothered by my voice. She's used of me talking while she's napping. Her sister is gone. She went downstairs. And I did not introduce myself. My name is Sofia Tsourlaki, for those of you that you don't know me. And in today's video, I will talk to you about the book An Unlikely Social Justice Warrior, Making My Life Count as a Muslim Feminist by Ani Zonneveld. I'm sorry. So, before I start reading the book for you, and I will try to be as quick as possible. I'm not good in being quick with books because I like reading them. But anyway, let me give you the background of my personal relation with Ani. I know Ani online for the last 5-6 years, and this is inevitable because we are both progressive feminist Muslims, and the internet is a very small place where like-minded people meet. So it was inevitable. I am a member of Facebook groups of the organization that Ani has created, Muslims for Progressive Values, which has branches all over the world, but the main branch is in the US, New York, Los Angeles, New York, Los Angeles. I don't know, Ani. Don't take it personally. I confuse names. We will see in the book. The book came out 2025. I think it was end of 2025. It is not an academic book, although Ani has put some references at the end, but it is not an academic book. It's a personal book. The tone is personal, is autobiographical, and it's very interesting. And as I said, I know Ani online. She sees my posts. I see her posts because she has a personal account as well. She's a very achieved Muslim woman, and I thought I knew about her. Not only through my personal interaction with her, but because when I was doing my research for my PhD, Ani came up. I asked the interviewees to randomly tell me names of organizations or individuals that have influenced them when it comes to progressive Islam, and both Muslims for Progressive Values, the organization, but also Ani herself came up. It was mentioned by the interviewees, which shows you that yes, she is someone known in the circle of progressive feminist Muslims, and she is someone that has left a footprint. Through my research and her involvement in organizations and activism, I thought I knew about her. But when I read this book, I realized there was a lot I didn't know about her. And I have to say that Ani asked me to present her book, and I'm always honest with you. You know that by now. If you don't, you haven't watched enough of my videos. Whenever I make a book presentation, I'm telling you the background. So Ani contacted me, was like, "Hey, can you talk about my book?" I was like, "Yeah, more than happy." I have to say that I knew that the book came out because Ani had put it on her Facebook page, but it was in the period in a very difficult for me period mentally. So I made a mental note that, I want to read that book. But given that this is not an academic book, it went into my not priority list. So when Ani contacted me, I was like, "Oh, can you talk about my book?" Okay. So I ordered the book, I bought the book, and this is important for you to understand that I have not been financed by any way. Ani did not send me the book or any way. And why do I say that? It is important to support such work, not for the author, because the author most probably will not take much of the revenues produced out of the sales. Authors don't get paid. but it is important for the sales, for the publications. It is important when a person goes with a book about progressive Islam, about feminist Islam for publication. It is important for the publisher to know that this book will sell, because publishers don't care about the content. Publishers only care about sales. So supporting such publications, buying such books is very important for you specifically, because it's different to listen from me bits and bytes and different for you to delve in, because different parts of the book resonate with me, with my lived experiences, and different parts of the book will resonate with you. So it is important for you to have such books, but it's also good for the market, for the publishers to know that there is demand, because if there is no demand, sooner or later the publishers will stop publishing such books, and then these voices will be silenced. So let's start with the book. I have some notes here to help me, because a book is a book, and how long can I have to present a book? Yes, so the first and the second chapter. Okay, so Ani is beyond the Muslim activism element. Is a musician. She writes songs, she produces songs, she sings songs, etc. Which of course will sound surprising to many of you out there. How come a Muslim woman and she is a songwriter and a singer? Well, by this information alone, you can start understanding Ani. So the first and the second chapter are about her music career and her. Throughout the book, Ani has flashbacks to her childhood and how each and every one of her beliefs and identity elements relate to some childhood experiences, some familial ties, etc. So in the second chapter, she talks about the point that she had a faith crisis, which is wonderful and it's good, because we all need to have faith crisis. If you have never experienced a faith crisis, then most probably you don't really believe in your religion, whatever your religion is, but you obey and you copy. Then chapter 3, she compares the music industry in Malaysia versus the music industry of the USA. She says that it was much easier to be accepted in Malaysia because there was less sexism than what in the US, and she was surprised because the Malaysians did not ask her to wear the hijab, and it has a short hair. That's her style, and she does not wear the hijab. And I have made a note that because Anne is a Malaysian, okay. So the fact that her father was a diplomat, maybe that has played a role. Although I do know that we know politicians, we don't know diplomats. So if I ask you now, who is the ambassador of your country in this country, you will not know the name. So I don't think that her father's career played a role. But anyway, that's what she does in the third chapter. And this chapter is a very, very important mention of a film. Now I'm giving you the overview. I will go and I will read bits and bytes. Chapter 5, she talks about her paternal lineage, great-grandfather, grandfather, and her father. Chapter 5, very important. If I would advise you to read only one chapter from the entire book, that will be chapter 5, because in this chapter, she vividly demonstrates how her identity as a Muslim, progressive, and feminist brings her against the traditionalist Muslims, but also the ex-Muslims and the secular Muslims and the Islamophobes and the far right. It's a magical chapter. That's all I will say. I will read more about from this chapter. No, but it's a very good chapter. And then the chapter number 6 is about her maternal family line, especially her grandmother and then aunt. And she talks about childhood experiences, because Ani is the daughter of a diplomat and a housewife, essentially. It's surprising that in her book she emphasizes how she was closer, or her father was much more open-minded comparing to her mother. Her mother propagated and instilled, or attempted to instill, in Ani, whose full name is Zuriani, but she made it Ani. So the mother tried to instill notions of patriarchy and oppression, etc. So this is also an interesting element. And then it's chapter number 7 that I don't remember if I made any, or no, it was not chapter 7. It was chapter number 10 that talks about interfaith marriages, and then chapter 11 about LGBTQ rights, and we will see nice, juicy things. In chapter 12, she talks about, or she wonders, what is the American culture nowadays, if we can have this. Other chapters that I didn't mention, I didn't make notes. Let me read you the chapters. So in chapter 7, did I mention it? The liars and the truth tellers. If you watch the previous video, I told you that I will make a specific video based on something that Ani says in her book. That's the chapter that I will use for another video, because here she says many juicy things. Chapter 8, solving the problem of women and girls' rights. Chapter 9, becoming an American. And then I told you interfaith marriages, LGBTQ rights, what is an American Muslim culture, and chapter 13, the politics of human rights. I will not read from every single one of the chapters, and I will definitely not read the entire chapters, but I will read bits and bytes that I made notes, just because I believe that these are important things. I will start with the first thing she mentions in the introduction. It's page XI, so that will be 11 in Latin numbers. And she says, in the human rights space I work in, often around people of faith, the word feminist is usually frowned upon. It has been misunderstood to mean anti-men or men-hating women. It was therefore important to include the term feminist in the title of this book to explain that although I identify with the values of feminism, that is the belief in and advocacy of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes, I also acknowledge that there are different approaches and tones in the ways in which feminists conduct themselves. Mine is just one example, and this is beautiful. It is beautiful in them to understand that if you have met one Muslim feminist, you haven't met all of them. Each person has variations. We have our lived experiences and our character that plays very important role in the way that we express or embody, if you wish, a certain ideology, a certain idea. Okay. Because Islamic feminism, like every type of feminism, is at the end of the day an ideology. Ani, and she mentions that throughout her book, she is a soft-spoken, gentle person, that she waits her words before she speaks, and she approaches others in a mediating way, I would say. This is her practice. I'm the opposite. I'm very feisty, I'm very full of fire, I'm very sharp, and I say hard truths onto your face. That's my character. Okay. We are both feminists, but we will definitely have different approaches. In certain things, I would disagree with her approach, but it is her approach. And this is lovely that she puts it at the beginning and the introduction, and always read the introductions, people, because she clarifies that whatever you read in this book, whatever I have done in my life, and she has a strong and long and rich legacy, it is her own way, not the only way. Okay? I have made many notes. I will not give you too much about her life, because you can Google and find about how she grew up and blah blah blah, about her father and her mother, or you can buy the book and read about that. Another thing I liked on page 10, she says, by the time I had written and produced my first Islamic pop album at 42 years old, I had already been a 15-year veteran songwriter and producer in the music industry in Los Angeles. Los Angeles, not New York, Los Angeles. I could write and produce in my sleep, and I knew how the distribution of music works. Now, in this part of the book, she talks about her first steps in music industry and all the struggles that she faced, both by non-Muslim and Muslim organizations. She talks about the former Cat Stevens, now Yusuf something, that he had created a music production company about Islamic music, which we know them as nasheeds. And at some point, someone contacted her and said, "Hey, he wants to hear your music." And she was enthused. She was like, "Okay, like-minded Muslim, a brother, we'll help each other." And then after a few months of silence, they returned to her sample, like, "Oh, we cannot do it because we don't have the funds." Right after that, they produced 3 different albums of males, because this organization, at least based on what Ani says in the book, only produces and promotes male singers. So she talks about her journey, difficult journey in music industry. But I particularly like this part because it positions the moment of maturity at the age of 40, the decade of 40, which is the decade that we know that the Prophet received revelation. And I personally believe that our 40s are our best period of life. Up to your 40s, you get to know the world around you, you get to get slapped by life different times to take some lessons. And you, as she says here in her work, you train yourself in whatever you want to do. She talks about one of the many organizations. Um, she talks about a retailer in Los Angeles, a Muslim online retailer, Islamicity, that in 2004 told her, "Don't get me wrong, Annie, we love your music," he said apologetically. "We listen to it all day at the office, but we just can't sell it. Our shoppers will boycott us." "Why?" I asked. "Well, first, you're a female singer, and a female voice is aurat. It's sexual. It's Secondly, you used all the musical instrumentation in your production, and during the Prophet Muhammad's time, there was only the dambek percussion. So therefore, only a drum is permissible as a musical accompaniment." And she makes a note saying, "The hypocrisy is jarring." And it is a hypocrisy because they don't, we like it, we listen, we privately listen to it, but we will not take it out because the Muslims will not buy it. And here is the vicious circle of that's mind blowing. And it talks about the musical industry, but that works also in publications. It works in even in preachers, online preachers. You have online preachers, or you have music producers, or you have book publishers that they want to publish whatever they know that people will support financially. If you talk to them in private, they are much more reasonable, but they will not show it publicly. And now let's go to the other side. Let's go to the believers. The believers, because they only see traditionalist expressions out there, music, books, online preachers, they come to believe that this is the true Islam. Why? Because that's the only Islam they see. So when someone comes and tells them, "Look, there are other understandings of Islam," they become furious. And it's like the chicken or the egg. Those who have some kind of authority or power to production, They remain conservative because they believe that the people are conservative, and if we are not conservative, they will boycott us, or they will even harm us physically. And the people say, well, traditionalist is the only way, because look, every Muslim is traditionalist because every production is traditionalist. It's a vicious circle, and anyway. She talks about the 2005 music festival with the title Muslim Fest, organized by Sound Vision in Chicago, which clearly and publicly, I read now, clearly and publicly stating female performers need not apply. There were no female musical performers. It's the same thing, the same continuation of the same mentality. I read from page 15. From my experiences, patriarchy is embedded in all cultures, religions, and races, and dominates the world regardless of what occupation or line of work you find yourself in. I have experienced patriarchy in all its forms, from those closest to me and from afar. Patriarchy manifested itself in my mother, the music business, the world of religion, and even in interactions with human rights advocates. The hierarchical structure of patriarchy, including the women who support that structure, could be found in society's expression of caste systems, colorism, racism, sexism, and most prolifically in religion. The interpretation of Islam as we know it today is alien to me. It was not in the manner of my father raised me, and is the doing of Wahhabism, the newly formed Saudi interpretation, new as in 250 years old, in the context of Islam's 1,400-year-old history. This version is incredibly dogmatic, void of the right to think freely. It is cruel, misogynistic, suffocating, and as we have witnessed, even at times justifies violence. It is this version of Islam that has permeated Muslims across the world, mainstreamed by petrodollars, and has now become the dominant version, displacing the multitude of Muslim cultures around the world into a homogeneous one. In short, it is Wahhabi cultural imperialism. Now we go to chapter 2, Pure Intent, where, let me see my notes. Yeah, here talks about identity crisis, education, and her family, familial experiences. Let's put it that way. I will read on page 21. I have made many markings, but I will not read all of that because the video will be 3 days. I came to realize, page 21, I came to realize that much of what defines us as Muslim and our religious practices isn't necessarily rooted in the Quran. Many distortions and the misplacement of our values can be traced back to interpretations crafted by men centuries ago. These interpretations, enshrined as Sharia law, embodied patriarchal and misogynistic, self-serving versions sold to lay Muslims as God's law. And that's very important. Islamic law, it's not God's law. Sharia law, as it has been practiced and as it has been shaped, is not God's law. This falsehood that Sharia law is God's law begins to shape perceptions from a young age, usurping our right to read, to think critically, and to think freely. It limits, insists, and imposes the belief that the path to heaven lies solely in obedience to the designated religious authorities. For women, this obedience extends to their husbands, which of course is all about control. I'm just skipping bits because there are things that are very important. Okay, from page 31. She talks about the incident when she was young. She was in her house and she was reciting the Quran in her room, and her mother heard her, and her mother rushed into um, into her. And this was in Egypt when because the family was traveling. Okay, so at some point they stayed in Egypt. I think from 69 to 74. 1974, and the family will have the wife of the then president of Egypt, Sadat, and they will listen to women reciting the Quran, because this is Kulthum, that you all know. I hope you all know Kulthum. If not, Google her. She started as a Quran reciter. So in Egypt, the idea of women reciting the Quran was not that alien as it is in Wahhabi Islam. Back then, okay, in Egypt back then, not in Egypt today. So based on one of these incidents, Ani was in her room and she was reciting the Quran. Then her mother listened to her and rushed into the room and says, "Stop doing this. Be quiet. A woman cannot recite the Quran." And Ani says in page 31, and that is why my mother's reaction to my call to prayer confused me. It was as if in a professional and official setting, which was when they were hosting the president's wife, there was one standard and another for the family. It was all the more confusing when I later learned that my father chaired Malaysia's international Quran reading competition in 1964, which included a women's category with men and women in the audience. And then she goes on to talk about the obstacles she faced in music industry. And I hope Annie will forgive me for not going into depth about details about that, because I rather that you read this chapter, not because it's not interesting, it's very interesting because she faced obstacles based on her gender, based on her looks. She either didn't look very Muslim or she looked very Muslim. She looked brown, okay? Her Muslim identity was a very strong element on the resistance and the opposition she faced in the music industry. What is this? Racism. Here she says, page 34 says, I'm not black, I'm not white, not Latino, or Jewish. I'm Southeast Asian and not Korean, Chinese, or Japanese, collectively labeled as East Asian, which is what most Americans expect when you say Asian. So you see, it's not funny, but it's hilarious in a way that everything she is was used against her in the music industry. Even the fact that she was single. She says how she would wear a fake ring to pretend that she's married to avoid advances. Now, the reason I don't go into details on this chapter is because, as I said at the beginning, I resonate with specific parts of the book. Perhaps you will resonate with different. So if you are in the music industry, if you are an artist, you will resonate with the chapters about her art. For me, that I'm more into the religious aspect, I resonate more about with different chapters. But I will read on page 41. She says, society makes it very hard for a woman to just be. At every level of society, whether it be in the family unit, in religious communities, corporate, the music business, or even the human rights world, sexism and patriarchy permeate to hold girls and women back from living their full potential. It is what fuels my indignation, my anger, and my work. It is from these experiences that I have ingrained in me what living your full potential really means. And it is remarkable how hard it is to live to your full potential when we are constantly given a prescribed and confining role. My mother sometimes scolded me when I laughed too loudly in public, and that was apparently unbecoming for a girl. This curtailing of my expressions is trivial in comparison to what some women and girls experience, especially in some Muslim societies. It is these moments of indignation at these minor infringements of my freedom to express myself that have made me emphasize with grave hardships young women and girls endure in the name of religion. And culture. It is the empathy that keeps my focus steady on the causes that I work on, and rage that allows me to be unflinching and unapologetic in my defense of the rights. And you see, when I said that I resonate with certain parts of the book and essentially with certain experiences, this specific thing that she says, that her mother was not, oh, she woke up, my baby. This specific part that she talks about, you're the most beautiful, about her mother not allowing her to laugh, resonates with me 100%. Although I'm a convert, bear this in mind. One of the many reasons I resonate with Progressive Islam is because I grew up in a Christian environment. I'm Greek Orthodox Christian environment. Not that my family was particularly religious. My maternal grandmother was. My mother and her husband, they were not. But I had the exact same limitations as a Christian girl. I was not permitted to laugh. I was not permitted to dance. When I was sitting, I was supposed to keep my legs closed. All these things. So when in my 20s, I started being introduced in Islam, and I started listening people saying the exact same things, this time justifying them in Islam, I was like, something's wrong here. Because if these things you tell me now, and you claim that this is because God said so, why the Christians are doing the exact same things? So either you're the same thing, or it's not about God, it's not about religion, there is something else. When I grew up in my 30s, I realized that, yeah, this is patriarchy. It has nothing to do with religion, and it happens across religions. Anyway, back to Ani and her book. Yeah, she says something that I really like. She talks about FGM, female genital mutilation. And she says about, in 2006, a German organization, Target, led by a couple, I will not dare pronounce their names. They contacted Al-Azhar University, okay, 1,000-year-old Sunni Islam institution, to hold a convening of religious authorities to issue a statement against the practice of female genital mutilation. And here, it's the juicy part. The Grand Mufti of Egypt at the time, Ali Goma, said, if you pay for the conference, I will make the Al-Azhar Conference Center available to you and will offer you my patronage. The conference did take place, and the outcome was a book that she calls the Gold Book. I searched for a Gold Book as a title. I didn't find it. Ani, if you watch this video, and I'm sure you will because I will send it to you, what is this Gold Book? Can I have it? Because I was searching for it. But this, you see the juicy part? Money, 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 money. If you pay, I will give you my patronage. It's not like, oh, I cannot because this is not in the religion, or I can because I will do it for the sake of Allah. It's if you pay. Bear this in mind. We will use it in chapter number 9. Another interesting thing that happened, it's not here, it's later. Later we will read another thing another incident that leads, I hope I didn't skip it, with FGM and Ani's experience with an American politician, a female American politician. We will see it later. Before we go to that, one of the things I didn't know about Ani, and I learned through the book, is that there has been a movie, a short movie about Ani. This was made in 2016. The title is Al-Imam. I recently posted it on my Facebook account. I will put a link also in the description of this video for you to go and watch it, because there are some very funny elements in this movie. The one that I liked the most, there was one that I liked and one that infuriated me. The one that I liked was that Ani was in the film documents. So the film was following Ani, okay, and was documenting her life. And Ani says here that sometimes the crew would come to my home early in the morning with me opening the door still in my pajamas, and other times they would film me warming up my vocals in the car. It also documented the threats I received, the hate messages, and the toll it has taken on the relationship between myself and the conservatives in my family, especially my sister and my mother. I have to say that the director of this film, who was a student back then, his name is Omar Al Dakhil. There is a picture of them here. You can see. So yeah, the threats were the part. Sorry, the threats was the part that infuriated me. Not that I'm new or strange to the threats that progressive feminist Muslims receive, but it infuriated me. The funny part was that, and I put that on my Facebook. There is a scene where Ani is invited in Egyptian television, and there is a young scholar. I don't know his credentials. He's dressed like a scholar, so I assumed he was a scholar. Where, in a very serious manner, the way that these scholars talk, they don't smile, because if they smile, their scholarship will go away. And he's like, Ani is also an imam. She's leading prayers, mixed prayers. So based on the prayers, that's the topic discussed in the Egyptian television, and the scholar said, you should stop doing that. Of course, I will tell you, woman, what to do. And Ani, I would be furious. I would fight back with arguments. Ani didn't. Ani started laughing in a very gentle and cute laughter. And he was like, why should I do so? And you should see the face of the scholar. Because don't forget, people, we women, our greatest fear from men is that they will kill us. But their greatest fear is that we will laugh at them. So the moment I saw the scene was hilarious. And it was, I will say something, this was the appropriate reaction. At some point, I need to stop taking everything so seriously. What I didn't know, that Ani put it as a comment when I posted that on my Facebook, is that she didn't know that this scholar would be there. The channel didn't tell her about that. They kind of tried to trick her, and this is something we need to be aware that happens. So they invited her. They were not transparent with her, and they tried to trick her that, oh, we will bring the scholar, and the scholar will start quoting Quran and will start putting her in her corner. She managed it majestically. But this is a very, very, very interesting film. I suggest that you go and watch it. I will have the description. I will have the link in the description. And then page 48 about this, this film says, distributions didn't come without its challenges. After all, it is a positive film about a Muslim woman fighting sexism and patriarchy. While it made its debut on National Geographic, the channel's headquarters in Washington, D.C. received a death threat, prompting National Geographic to temporarily take it down. Having a young man from the Arab world direct a film about me was a form of acknowledgement of the work I have done through Muslims for progressive values. Again, it is important to acknowledge that there are Muslim men that are supportive. Progressive Muslims and feminist Muslims, we are not only female Muslims, okay? The injustice most painful to bear is those from our own parents, especially our mothers. Just like my mother's various prohibitions of what I as a girl can and cannot do, the implementation of the practice of FGM is often carried out by the womenfolk of the family. But because of my overall positive family upbringing, and as a mother, I can stand in front of many Muslim parents and challenge them to do better for their children. Fortunately for me, I had an ambitious father who had very high expectations of all his children, including us girls. He was the counterbalance to my mother's more sexist mindset. The mantra my father ingrained in me was, make your life count, Ani. And this is surprising. And this shows you why Ani is very balanced in not overall rejecting manhood, males of her activism, and she speaks the truth. In all our feminism and in all our women, all for rights for women, there are many women many women that they are sexist, misogynists, they perpetrate patriarchal elements, etc. This deserves a whole discussion of 10 days about why this happened and if these women are victims themselves. But the fact is that they play a very important role in maintaining patriarchy and oppression of women. Okay. Now we go to the next chapter. My father and my Malaysia. Oh yeah, I told you about her family. I will not read. Sorry, Ani. I will not read from chapter 4, not because it's not. It has very interesting elements in aiming to understand why Ani is the way it is. But you read it when you buy the book, because I really want to read from. As you can see, I mean, I will show you. This is chapter number 5, guys. You can see that almost everything I want to read it. So, chapter 4 for you, chapter 5 for me. Not Muslim enough and too Muslim. Today, I firmly identify myself as a progressive Muslim and a human rights advocate, identifying myself as a progressive Muslim and a human rights defender is one sentence is tricky. And here's why. When I'm challenging the Muslim patriarchal individuals and institutions for their misogynistic, homophobic, and supremacist interpretations of Islam, I am often told I'm not Muslim enough because I do not wear a hijab, a headscarf. That I don't read Arabic, another claim that if you don't, to be Muslim, you need to be proficient in Arabic. And that I'm not traditionally trained. My rebuttal to their attempts at discrediting me is simple. I use passages of the Quran that make no claim that a Muslim woman needs to cover her hair, that Arabic is not the only language of God, and that every person has the responsibility to use their God-given brain to think critically and to rationalize. Believe it or not, this is actually the easier challenge. The harder challenge is being recognized as legitimate by seculars and ex-Muslims, as well as secular non-Muslims on the left and the right. In other words, just about everyone else. And this is a reality. If you're a progressive feminist Muslim, everyone fights you. Everyone. That's why it is very important for us to support each other, because we know that everyone attacks us. And you know from my channel alone, if we don't show solidarity, if we don't support each other, doesn't work. And says, in USA, progressive Muslims are the majority, but they are barely visible. Muslims for Progressive Values was therefore founded out on this need for representation and for the majority of American Muslims who, for various reasons, have left the mosque and needed community in the summer of needed community, full stop. In the summer 2007, and then says different names of people that they established MPV, Muslim for Progressive Values. The one name that it's dear to my heart is Imam Dai Abdullah, who left this world, I think it was August 2025. And says, in the early days of founding MPV, asserting our identity was as progressive within the Muslim community was met with resistance, often leading to heated conversations. Mainstream Muslims would react indignantly, exclaiming, "So I'm not progressive?" This defensive tone was palpable. I would calmly counter, asking a simple question. Do you support a woman's full agency and equality, including the right to lead both men and women in prayer? And do you stand for LGBTQ plus rights? Invariably, the response will be a resounding no. To this, I would assert, then by definition, you are not progressive. Many years later, my longtime friend Rabbi Jim Kaufman observed, Ani, you should have called the organization Muslims for Traditional Values, as you are claiming that is rightly Islam. That may be true, but by labeling ourselves progressive, we are able to assert our own identity and recreate traditions that truly reflect the Quran's egalitarian values, much like the way Reform and Reconstructionist Judaism have done. At this point, I need to say another thing that I really like in this book. Contrary to the traditionalist notions of Islam, that advocate and instill in the hearts of Muslims hatred towards Jews, hatred towards Christians, hatred in general for everyone. Ani works with similar-minded organizations from other faiths, so progressive Christians, progressive Jews, which again, it's part of progressive Islam. In progressive Islam, we understand that the words of Quran are applicable to all humanity, and Christianity and Judaism are the different manifestations of the same God. Their prophets are our prophets. So this is one of the good things. I mean, read the book is very important to see that we are not alone. Progressive Muslim, and if anything, historically, we are the last faith to start having a progressive feminist expression. I'm trying to see what I can skip. I will read this part because I really like it. For secular and ex-Muslims, the task of disentangling their cultural upbringing infused with Islam from the pure teachings of the Quran is a daunting challenge. I empathize with the trauma caused by decades of emotional and mental abuse in the name of religion, leading to a deep-seated hatred for Islam. During my travels, I encountered resistance firsthand. In Tunisia, after introducing our Imams for She initiative, I faced vehement criticism from secular Tunisian feminists with comments such as, "How dare you put Islam and human rights in the same sentence?" In another instance, a young, educated Tunisian man confessed his atheism when I shared a Quranic verse affirming the right to choose one's religion or no religion. He remained skeptical. So I asked him to look up the Quranic verse 256. He read the Quran off his phone. There is no compulsion in faith. And he stared at me in utter disbelief. I left him with a simple truth. You have been lied to. Bear this in mind when in the next video we will talk about the lies and the liars. It's beautiful, guys. Honestly, I cannot. I have made so many annotations, but I can't continue because she says something very nice that I want to mention. She talks about how traditionalists use certain hadith and certain cultural elements infused in Islam to oppress people, and then the Islamophobes use the same tools, the same hadith and the same arguments to reject, let's say, or attack Islam. So it's the exact same materials that they both use, which is kind of confusing. And how all Muslim men are being demonized. And here says that she says something very nice, that the demonization of Muslim men is quite easy when they have perpetrated violence against humanity, women and girls in the name of their version of Islam. And says, so much so that in July 2024, when a group of young Taylor Swift fans were stabbed, resulting in 3 deaths, the false claim that the crime was committed by a Muslim immigrant caught fires as truth. As a result, several asylum shelters, mosques, and Muslim-owned businesses in the UK were attacked and a few burned as revenge. And I will tell you something. Right now, if I ask you what was the religion of the person that attacked Taylor Swift, you will tell me Muslim. I'm pretty sure you will think it was a Muslim. That's what has remained in the consciousness of everyone. The person was Christian. The person was an evangelical Christian from Rwanda. But everyone thinks it was a Muslim. It wasn't. But you see how easily, how traditionalist Muslim men make it so easy to have such distortions of reality, because, we like it or not, they themselves have committed similar crimes. She talks about the Imam, the Women Imam Network, which is very nice. How she participates in conferences in progressive Christian festivals. As I told you, she works with all faiths, which is the spirit of progressive Islam. Where is the one about? She talks about child marriage and the fact that in the USA today, FGM is still persistent. Yes, this is the incident. This is very important. I will read it, even if this is the last thing I will read. What is the time? Yeah, might be the last thing I will read. Page 78 about FGM. In 2019, a Muslim caucus conference was organized in DC, Washington, DC. It was a convening for the American Muslim community to discuss issues that should be debated and to set priorities for selecting a candidate to vote for. I vividly recall my encounter with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. As she has millions of followers, I wanted her to become an advocate of the issue of FGM by tweeting once a month to educate the general public and by raising the fact that in 2020 we did not have an anti-FGM law in place. She's talking about US, okay? Given the fact that as a coalition we were unable to secure a meeting with her on this matter, I thought this would be an opportunity for the cause. Upon raising this issue with her in this public forum, she unfortunately took it personally. That is, I raised the issue of FGM because she was a Muslim. I was quickly silenced and publicly berated by her with a humiliating slap down. This issue should have been very relevant to her, especially since two of the children cut were from her own congressional district in Minnesota. Earlier, she has discussed about clinics that they were working in the US illegally after hours and how children were traumatized, etc. The incident, while humiliating, also revealed a stark truth. The fight for justice often comes at a personal cost. The room erupted into cheers for her disrespectful slapdown, and the media coverage on these few seconds was overwhelming. Then, in page 79, she talks about the dimension, how big this issue became on social media and media in general, TV as well. And she continues saying, I discovered who my true allies were. I learned the power of media framing and faced a harshness at a level that was cruel, simply for advocating against torture of children in front of a supposedly progressive crowd. Even EU executives sitting in Brussels and Geneva, whom I've partnered with for their commitment to the UN Declaration of Human Rights, questioned me and privately criticized me. I was also accused of being Islamophobic. Simply, this is we live in a crazy world. So I was accused of being Islamophobic simply for raising the issue to a fellow Muslim. And by the way, this Islamophobic accusation is being abused much in the way as any criticism of Israeli policies are anti-Semitic. It does tremendous disservice to the real cases of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Although we now finally have a comprehensive federal anti-FGM law, I might add we still have ways in discouraging this illegal practice, both within and outside of borders. You see the madness? You see the madness in the world we live. And this is another reminder that for those that they say, oh, you progressive feminists, you do that because you want to have your way in life. That's not the easy way, sweethearts. Okay. Chapter 6, Power and Empathy. Many incidents of her childhood, different experiences, different environments, different exposures, post-war Egypt, Malaysia, India. She has a piece I wanted to say about the India. Yeah, it's here, page 113. In New Delhi, our residence was within the Malaysian government's compound, housing the embassy, the ambassador's residence, and homes for the servants managing the property. Even within this microcosm, The stark disparities of caste were glaringly apparent. Our in house helper, a tall dark man who hardly smiled, belonged to a higher caste, contrasted sharply with our outdoor helper, a Dalit, who, no matter how hot or cold the weather was, always carried a smile. The Dalits are the untouchables, for those of you that you have an idea about castes. If you don't, Google them. He was in charge of upkeeping the large grounds as the chokidar, I think I pronounced it correctly, the gardener. Although both of them lived in the same living spaces, so both the servants, the indoor and the indoor being of higher caste, the outdoor being an untouchable, uh, they both lived in the same living spaces in the servants' quarters of the Malaysian compound. Our butler's prejudiced mentality manifested in his refusal to share a cup or eat from the same plate as our gardener. He went to great lengths to separate his cups, plates, and utensils, positioning them high in the kitchen cabinet to keep them separate from the rest. Rejecting this divisive attitude, my mom made a deliberate effort to ensure that both her helper and gardener witnessed us using the same set of plates and utensils as the gardener, making the point that discrimination is not tolerated through our simple yet symbolic action. By Ibram X. Kendi's definition, this was our proactive stance as anti-racists. I vividly recall an incident when my mother informed me about chatter circulating regarding my soccer drills, football, with the son of our Dalit servant. So the daughter of the ambassador, was playing football with a Dalit, an untouchable boy, and how inappropriate that was. Her response was resolute. Don't bother. Don't be bothered by it. Continue to play. This simple yet powerful statement became a guiding light, teaching me to stand against prejudice even when it is the norm. And she continues to say something I didn't know in page 115. I mean, this incident shows how, and this is what I'm telling you, throughout the book, Ani has flashbacks on her childhood and how her childhood experiences have shaped her values and principles in life. She says something I didn't know. Says, regrettably, the insidious caste system has found a foothold in the United States. Despite the hopes of those who emigrated to America, the specter of caste-based discrimination continues to haunt personal and professional spheres, notably within the American tech industry. Disturbing incidents such as emails exposed urging managers not to hire workers from the Dalit caste highlight the persistence of this discrimination within some Indian immigrants. So imagine the people that in India are deemed untouchable. They go in great lengths because they are very poor, inevitably, to educate their children, and their children fly to America with hope that, okay, now I will live away of discrimination. And then there are emails circulating in management in companies like, oh, don't hire him, he's a Dalit. Not he doesn't have the qualifications, not he's not a good person, not he's not good for the job, not he will not do the job. He's a Dalit, so don't hire him. And it's shameful. Oh, here I put super sus, but I don't know. Let me see why. I will read page 119. Despite the proven track record of the effectiveness of our human rights advocacy, raising funds, now she talks about the organization, MPV, to scale up our programs was always a challenge. I applied to foundations aid, although successfully, I applied to foundations, and although successfully in 1 year, there is no guarantee the support will continue in subsequent years. Most foundations will fund you for 1 year, maybe 2, and if you are very lucky, for 3 years, and they expect miracles. The power of their purse is palpable. For a long time, funders were very stingy with how much of their funding is allowed to pay for operational expenses like salaries, insurance, or bills to turn the lights on. Somehow it was, and for some still are, obvious that it costs money to run an organization that supports the implementation of the programming. Needless to say, It took me many years to learn the ropes of how to create a budget. Small nonprofits are not taught how to create a budget, and therefore, for many, especially women leaders, we tend to do things for free, and we are taken advantage for it. Because funding is important. If you want to create a difference, to make a difference, make a change, if you want to have activism, to be active, to do something, you have to cover expenses, even your own expenses. Okay, let's say these hours now that I dedicate in reading the books, in disseminating this knowledge, I'm not getting paid out of that. I could be working on something to pay me. Okay, that creates poverty. But anyway, chapter 7, the liars and the truth tellers. I don't think I will read any from this part because I will make a specific video about the liars. So chapter 7, I will skip it. Chapter 8, it's about FGM, it's about activism, very important elements of what MPV does, essentially. So it is important to read it. I will not read it now to you, primarily because of time restrictions. We will go to interfaith marriages. Chapter 10. As the community grew, we're talking about the progressive Muslims community. As the community grew, I was being sought out and asked to conduct interfaith Islamic marriages where non-Muslim partners did not have to convert. And we're talking about the female being Muslim and the male being non-Muslim. This was not something I had envisioned or planned for, but it was and still is clear that an interfaith Islamic marriage that adheres to the teachings of the Quran is very much a need and something that is growing in demand. An Islamic marriage is often coined as nikah, which in Arabic means sexual intercourse. Sorry to be crude, but this is a reality check, especially for many non-Arabic speaking Muslims. Essentially what it is, a nikah is a contract between a man and the woman with the agreement that the woman will provide sexual services, if you put it like that. And Ani here continues, says, the nikah contract or marriage contract is therefore one that stipulates the terms of a licit sexual relationship, because marriage, according to the Quran, is a commitment and a contract between two individuals of sound mind. In the marriage contract, the woman can stipulate the terms of the marriage, such as the right to visit her family, the right to work outside the home, the right to own property and to manage it, and the right to practice her religion, all rights given to women in the 1700s in the Quran. Incidentally, European women did not have the right to own property until 1870, and American women did not have the right to open their own bank account until 1974. Just saying. That's what it says here. Unfortunately, though, patriarchal and tribal interpretations of Islam are still the prism through which the religion is practiced and are the basis for why religious leaders and imams prohibit Muslim women from marrying non-Muslims. And page 192. Prophet Muhammad's daughter Zainab was married to a pagan, and she remained married to him even after she converted to Islam. If Prophet Muhammad didn't force Zainab to divorce her pagan husband, not even Christian or Jew, this is something we need to bear in mind. Zainab, the daughter of the Prophet, was married to a pagan, to an idolater, and the Prophet didn't force her. If anything, there is an incident that the husband has been captured in one of the battles, and Zainab sends her necklace to her father, to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and says, that's my payment for you to release my pagan husband. And the Prophet did it. So if Prophet Muhammad didn't force Zainab to divorce her pagan husband or force him to convert to Islam, then it goes to show the 21st century practice of prohibiting Muslim women from marrying non-Muslim men has no basis in Islam. I vividly recall my first interfaith marriage ceremony in 2007, a poignant event where a Muslim woman married a non-Muslim man of the Christian tradition. It was held in the backyard of the groom's parents' home with a guest list of about 15 people, mostly from the groom's side of the family, and one sibling from the Muslim bride side of the family in attendance. Despite the joy, I sensed the sadness in the bride's eyes, a result of her parents' absence due to their disapproval. I still remember the feeling. I have seen that heavy heart and sadness too many times over the years, illustrating the challenges faced by those who defy traditional expectations. On so many occasions, when I answered phone calls for MPV and a bride inquired if I would marry them Islamically, and I responded affirmatively, some would burst into tears of relief and happiness. This highlights the trauma and emotional coercion that many face from parents, the burden of not sinning and going to hell, all gone, lifted, vaporized, dispelled with a simple yes. She also talks about marriage between among LGBTQ plus members, and I think okay. Now, the last thing I will read, I promise it will be the last. It's chapter 11, LGBTQ plus rights. In a village deep in the interior of Tunisia, Ahmed attempted to persuade an old man against his deep disdain for homosexuality. He recalled how the old man said, even if Prophet Muhammad was to come down here in front of me and tell me that it is not a sin to be a homosexual and a Muslim, I would not believe it. The harmful impact of such teachings is evident in this story, illustrating the deeply ingrained homophobia that persists. You see, even the Prophet, the Quran says that we should listen to the Prophet. He said, no, when it comes to homosexuality, even if the Prophet would come, I would refuse the Prophet. So you see, it's not about religion. It's about your hatred. A theology promoting hate is not benign. It causes real harm to those on the receiving end of that discrimination. When family members and especially parents emotionally and physically abuse their homosexual child because the religious teachers and leaders condemn them, the suffering endured by LGBTQ folks angers me. When a child has been raised to believe they are going to hell for being gay, it is devastating, traumatizing, and causes self hatred, depression, and mental health issues. I know this as I have seen and have been the mother for some young LGBTQ plus youth. The mother is within quotation, so they are not her biological children, who need validation and affirmation of their identity. Yet I have also witnessed the opposite scenario and seen the positive impact of what an affirming and loving message has on one's well-being. In 2016, Omar Mateen killed 49 innocent partygoers at the Pulse Club in Orlando. Why? Because he believed that homosexuals are sinners and he had the right to kill them. This is very important, and I say that to go to every ear out there because it is very common, especially in academia, for adherents of traditionalist notions of Islam to want to silence silence us when we talk about such violent incidents. They're like, oh, this is scaremongering. Oh, you shouldn't talk about that. It's not scaremongering, it's facts. Anyway, let's continue. She mentions Scott Kugle, Scott Siraj al-Haq Kugle, Dr. Scott Siraj al-Haq Kugle. I believe you have watched the videos. If not, I have published videos about his book about LGBTQ, about homosexuality in Islam. Sorry. Yeah, okay. About the lying, here is another incident. I will read this incident, but I will also mention it in the next video. I will not read the details because it's 3 pages. How many are they? Should I? Yes, I will. This will be I promise it will be the last part. So, after the... yes, I will not read... Okay, so after the Pulse shooting in 2016, imams and religious leaders scrambled to declare, we support LGBTQ rights. It was a sudden pivot, an attempt to distance themselves from the responsibility of promoting homophobic theology in their communities by co-opting human rights language. So what did they do? The same people that in their mosques, in their websites, they will preach how homosexuals are sinners and they are going to hell and blah, blah, blah. The same people. When 2016 the shooting happened from a Muslim to the party goers, because they wanted to save themselves, we're innocent. We didn't arm the hand of this person. They came out and they were like, "Oh, we are with the LGBTQ plus rights." In 2017, a few months later, following the affirming messages for LGBTQ plus rights by Muslim religious leaders, the Human Rights Campaign, one of America's largest LGBTQ plus civil society organizations, decided to reserve a table at the annual ISNA conference. ISNA is about the Islamic of North America, Islamic something of North America. It's an umbrella of all Muslims of North America, at least the scholars. If I'm not mistaken, I might be mistaken because it's been 9 years now since then. I think that Khalid Abou Fadl had a beef with this organization. I'm not sure it's this organization specifically, but you understand when an organization is an umbrella and has preachings and teachings. So 2016, these traditionalist imams, they come out, all of them, and they say, we are with LGBTQ rights. Oh, my baby, walk. Hello, my beautiful. A few months later, the HRC, which is the America's largest LGBTQ plus society organization, decided to go into this conference and invited MPV, Muslim for Progressive Values. You agree with me? Yes. Yes. You're hungry? I'm sorry about that. I get distracted. So they invited MPV to partner with them. As the event unfolded, our table was set with our brochures, booklets, and banners. Attending the table on behalf of MPV was Frank Parmir and Michael Tumayan. I hope I pronounced the names correctly. For MPV was Frank Parmir and Michael Tumayan for HRC. Attendees approached with questions about LGBTQ plus rights in Islam and women-led prayer, offering support and affirmation for our inclusive interpretation of Islam. However, a young man, beard to the chest, with ankle-length pants, you know what that means, looked at our content and frowned, picked up a few materials, and left. Very good timing. Soon after, a security guard approached, instructing us to pack up and leave within an hour. Frank, panicking, called me for advice. I told him to pack up, but insisted they don't leave until meeting with the person who made that decision and who instructed the guard to tell them. What will happen, Frank, is that ISNA will deny it, and they will claim the messenger misunderstood and passed on the wrong message. I know the games they play. Whatever you do, insist on speaking to the decision maker, and I repeat, do not leave the building without doing so. Frank and Michael were escorted to an office room by a security guard to meet with Basharat Salim, the conference director of ISNA convention. At the back of the room, a few unidentified men observed and didn't intervene in the meeting. Michael asked Basharat, what was the problem, as our organization's missions were clearly outlined in the application. Basharat responded, we don't have a problem with HRC, we just have a problem with MPV. Bear in mind, HRC is the organization about the LGBTQ plus rights. MPV is the Muslim for Progressive Values that support LGBTQ plus people. Remember a few months earlier, these Muslims, leaders, imams, had publicized this declaration, we are all for LGBTQ plus rights. when they are outside our community, when they're not Muslims. Because when they're Muslims, we have problem with them. Michael said, excuse me, what do you mean? Basharat said, we don't have a problem with HRC, but we have a problem with MPV because it is a Muslim organization supporting LGBT, it says here. When Michael relayed this to me, I couldn't help but smile. It was a stark confirmation of the word of hypocrisy that I had cautioned him and other progressive organizations about for years. Well, now you have experienced it and heard it firsthand. Fast forward in 2023, and the same imams and religious leaders that in 2016 lied about supporting LGBTQ rights in aim to, distance themselves from the crime, have now published a position statement claiming they were mistaken, asking God for forgiveness. Instead of embracing inclusion, they have aligned themselves with the Christian right in their zealotry, vehemently opposing what they call the gay agenda. In a world full of hypocrites like those, there stands Imam Majid, unswayed and resolute. And then she talks about Imam Majid. Forgive me, Ani, and forgive me, Imam Majid, if you watch this video, I will not read. Please, for those of you that you really found bits and bytes of the book interesting, or you have curiosity about the bits and bytes I didn't mention. Again, not because they are not worthy, but because they do not resonate that immediately with me at the book. And yeah, I personally, I feel a little bit shamed because I didn't know many of the things that Ani is doing. I knew bits and bytes, but not in depth. And this book really made me get to know her, if I can say that from distance. That was all for this book. I hope you took the messages. How difficult it is to be out there and to be a progressive feminist Muslim from all sides, and their hypocrisy and the lies. And in the next video, I will dedicate more time to chapter number 7, was or 9? I think it was 7, about the liars and the lying. That is all for now, and I hope I will see you in one of my next videos, and I will continue the activism, because the way Ani serves activism or is engaged in activism in different ways, I mean, disseminating this knowledge is part of the activism. So, until the next video, take care of yourselves.